3 years of slinging drinks at Murphy's bar had taught me exactly 2 things: how to spot trouble before it started, and how to become invisible when it arrived. That Friday night, I failed at both. The door swung open just after 11, bringing with it a gust of October wind and 5 men in dark suits. They moved like predators, scanning the room with calculated precision before settling into the corner booth. I'd seen plenty of dangerous people in South Boston, but these were different. They wore authority like a second skin. "Vivian, table 6, Jerry called from behind the bar, already wiping down glasses with renewed intensity. He'd noticed them too. I grabbed my notepad and approached, keeping my expression neutral. The man at the center of the booth looked up and I froze. Dark eyes, almost black in the dim lighting, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. His hair was styled back, revealing a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and something predatory in the set of his mouth. A gold chain glinted against his throat, where his charcoal suit jacket hung open. "What can I get you?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Jameson." "Neat." His accent carried the faint trace of something European, buried under years of American smoothing. "The rest will have Guinness." I scribbled the order, hyper-aware of his gaze following the movement of my pen. When I glanced up, he was studying the scar that ran down my right cheek, the one I usually hid behind my hair. I resisted the urge to turn away. "Coming right up." Back at the bar, Jerry leaned in close. "That's Nikolai Brennan." The name meant nothing to me, but Jerry's pale face told me it should. And you don't want to know what he does for a living. Just serve them, be polite, and pray they leave quietly. I delivered their drinks without incident, though Brennan's eyes never left me. It felt like being studied under a microscope, every movement catalogued and analyzed. The sensation should have terrified me. Instead, it sparked something I hadn't felt in 3 years, a flicker of interest in being seen. The trouble started an hour later when 2 guys at the bar, already 3 sheets to the wind, began shouting over a Patriots game. I'd handled worse. But when one of them grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise, yanking me halfway across the bar, everything happened too fast. "Hey, sweetheart, I asked you a question." "Let go." I kept my voice low, non-threatening. De-escalation 101. His grip tightened. "Not until you tell me if you think that was a fair call." Movement in my peripheral vision. Brennan stood from the booth with liquid grace, crossing the space between us in 4 long strides. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make threats. He simply grabbed the drunk's arm and twisted it at an angle that made bone grind against bone. The man screamed. The sound cut through the bar like a knife. "She asked you to let go." Brennan's voice was conversational, almost pleasant, as he applied more pressure. "Do you understand? Or should I provide a clearer demonstration?" "I understand." "Jesus Christ, I understand." Brennan released him, and the drunk scrambled backward, cradling his arm. His friend had the sense to pull him toward the exit. Within seconds, they were gone, leaving only silence and 30 pairs of shocked eyes. I realized I was shaking. Not from fear, from the sudden rush of adrenaline fading into nothing. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Brennan turned those dark eyes on me again, and this time I saw something unexpected in them. Concern. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. It happens. It shouldn't." He pulled a business card from his jacket and set it on the bar between us. Simple black cardstock with a phone number in silver print. Nothing else. "If it happens again, call me." Then he was gone, his men following like shadows, leaving me staring at the card like it might explode. Jerry materialized beside me, shaking his head. "Vivian, throw that away. Whatever that man wants, you don't want to be part of it." I should have listened. Instead, I slipped the card into my apron pocket. Over the next week, I tried to forget about Nikolai Brennan and his unsettling presence. I focused on the familiar rhythm of work, the mechanical process of pouring drinks and collecting tips, pretending my life hadn't become a monument to stagnation. But then, I started noticing them. A black sedan parked across the street when I left for my shift. Different men in different cars, always watching. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, that 3 years of grief had finally cracked my sanity. But on the 5th day, when I mentioned it to Jerry, his face went white. "You need to call your sister. Now." Sam arrived within the hour, still in her courtroom suit, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that meant she was in work mode. We sat in the back office while Jerry covered the bar. "Nikolai Brennan runs the Brennan organization," Sam said, her lawyer voice clipped and efficient. "They control most of the illegal activities on the East Coast. Drugs, weapons, money laundering. The FBI has been trying to nail him for 10 years with no success. He helped me. Why would he have me followed? I don't know, Viv. And that's what scares me. These aren't good people. They don't do favors without expecting something in return." She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "Promise me you'll stay away from him." I promised, even though the card was still in my wallet, the number already memorized without conscious effort. 3 days later, I was closing up Murphy's when the van pulled up. 2 men got out, moving with purpose, and every instinct I'd developed screaming danger. I ran for the back door, but someone was already there, blocking my exit. "Don't make this difficult," a woman's voice said from behind me. "We just want to talk." Something hard connected with the back of my skull, and the world dissolved into darkness. I woke to the smell of rust and stale water. My head throbbed, vision swimming as I tried to focus on my surroundings. Warehouse. Empty except for some broken crates and machinery that looked like it hadn't run in decades. My hands were zip-tied behind my back, shoulders screaming from the awkward angle. "She's awake," the same woman's voice from earlier. She stepped into my line of sight, red hair cascading over shoulders covered in a leather jacket. Late 40s, beautiful in a sharp way that suggested violence wasn't foreign to her. Vivian Cole, 28, bartender. Unremarkable in every way except one. "Nikolai Brennan gave you his private number. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me." She crouched down, bringing us eye to eye. "I'm Lucia Voss, and I've been at war with the Brennans for the better part of 5 years. When I hear that Nikolai is personally protecting some nobody bartender, I pay attention. He isn't protecting me. He gave me a card. That's it. Then you won't mind if I use you to send him a message?" Lucia stood, pulling a knife from her boot. "Nothing personal, sweetheart. Just business. I'd accepted that I might die 3 years ago when Dylan's blood had pooled on the pavement around me. But staring at that blade, I realized I wasn't ready. Not like this. Not for nothing. "Wait," I said, hating the tremor in my voice. "He'll come for me. If you hurt me, he'll come." Lucia laughed. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." She raised the knife, and I closed my eyes. The sound of shattering glass made them fly open again. Men in black tactical gear poured through every entrance, weapons raised, moving with military precision. At the center of the chaos walked Nikolai Brennan, and the expression on his face promised death. What followed was brutal and efficient. Gunfire, screams, bodies hitting concrete. I couldn't process it all, my mind fragmenting under the weight of too much violence happening too fast. Then Brennan was there, cutting through my restraints with the same knife Lucia had threatened me with. "Can you walk?" Before I could answer, pain exploded in my left shoulder. I looked down, confused by the spreading crimson across my shirt. Someone was still shooting. Brennan cursed, scooping me up like I weighed nothing, and ran. The next few minutes blurred together. A car. Shouting. Pressure on my shoulder that made me scream. Then darkness again, softer this time, pulling me under like a tide. I surfaced from unconsciousness in pieces. First came the awareness of softness beneath me. Expensive sheets that felt nothing like my threadbare apartment bedding. Then pain, dull and throbbing in my left shoulder, wrapped in professional bandaging. Finally, the weight of someone's gaze. Nikolai Brennan sat in an armchair beside the bed, elbows resting on his knees, watching me with those unsettling dark eyes. He ditched the suit jacket, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with faded scars. The gold chain at his throat caught lamplight as he leaned forward. "How do you feel?" My throat felt like sandpaper, like I got shot in a warehouse. "The bullet grazed you. Dr. Hayes stitched you up." He gestured toward a water glass on the nightstand. "You're safe now." I pushed myself upright despite the protest from my shoulder. taking in the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked dark water, moonlight painting silver paths across gentle waves. Expensive furniture, minimalist decor, everything screaming wealth I couldn't begin to comprehend. Where am I? Cape Cod. My home. He said it simply, like bringing wounded bartenders to his private estate was routine. Lucia Voss won't find you here. Memory crashed back. The kidnapping, the knife, the violence that erupted around me like a living thing. I should have been traumatized, should have been curled in a ball demanding to go home. Instead, I felt strangely calm, like something fundamental had shifted in my understanding of the world. Why did she take me? I'm nobody to you. That's not true. Nikolai stood, moving to the window with his hands in his pockets. I've been having you watched since that night at Murphy's. Lucia has informants everywhere. She saw the protection detail and assumed you mattered to me. Do I? The question escaped before I could stop it. He turned, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable in his expression. I don't know yet, but I'd like the chance to find out. Honesty, brutal and unexpected. I didn't know what to do with it. I need to leave. I have work, my apartment, my sister. Even as I said it, the words felt hollow. What was I rushing back to? An empty life built around avoiding anything that made me feel. Your sister knows you're safe. I called her myself. Nikolai crossed back to the chair, sitting with careful deliberation. As for leaving, Lucia has 3 men watching your building, and 2 more stationed near Murphy's. She's not finished with you. Ice flooded my veins. You're saying I'm a prisoner. I'm saying you're a target. There's a difference. His voice softened. Stay here until I can neutralize the threat. A week, maybe 2. Then you can go back to your life. And if I refuse, then I'll have my men escort you home, where Voss will grab you again within 24 hours. He held my gaze. This isn't a gilded cage, Vivian. It's a safe house. But I won't force you. I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle myself. But the ache in my shoulder reminded me exactly how that had worked out. What about Sam? Is she safe? Something dark crossed Nikolai's features. Voss sent someone to her office. Didn't touch her, just delivered a message that they knew where she worked. He paused. I have 2 of my best watching her now. She won't be harmed. The calculation was simple. Stay and accept protection from a man I barely knew, or leave and put both myself and Sam in danger. Not really a choice at all. 2 weeks, I said. Then I want out of whatever this is. Nikolai nodded, but something in his expression suggested he knew better. 2 weeks. The first 3 days were suffocating. I spent most of my time in the guest room, venturing out only for meals that Nikolai insisted we share. He was courteous, keeping conversation neutral, never pushing. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like circling something neither of us wanted to name. On the 4th day, I found him on the back terrace, overlooking the ocean. October wind whipped his dark hair, the morning light catching on the tattoo that crawled up his neck. A crow with spread wings, rendered in precise detail, beautiful and menacing in equal measure. Couldn't sleep? I asked, joining him at the railing. Old habit. I do my best thinking in the early hours. He glanced at me, taking in my borrowed clothes, one of his shirts and sweatpants that I'd rolled up several times. How's your shoulder? Healing. I touched the bandage through the fabric. Dr. Hayes says the scar won't be too bad. Scars tell stories. His gaze drifted to my cheek, the vertical line I'd carried for 3 years. That one looks like it has a hell of a story. No one asked about my scar. They pretended not to notice, or they stared when they thought I wasn't looking. But no one ever just asked. The directness surprised me into answering. Car accident. I was driving. My brother Dylan was in the passenger seat. The words tasted like ash. He was 15. I walked away with this. He didn't walk away at all. Nikolai was quiet for a long moment, watching the waves. When he spoke, his voice carried weight I recognized. Grief, the kind that never fully healed. I had a brother too. Younger. He wanted to go to college, study architecture, build things instead of breaking them. His jaw tightened. He got caught in crossfire during a territory dispute. Wrong place, wrong time. I'm sorry. So am I. He turned to face me fully. I tell myself he made his own choices, that he knew what being part of this family meant. But the truth is simpler. I should have protected him. I didn't. Now I live with that. Understanding passed between us, wordless and profound. We were both carrying dead brothers, both drowning in the specific guilt that comes from surviving when someone you loved didn't. Does it get easier? I asked. No. You just get better at carrying it. Something loosened in my chest, a knot I'd been tying tighter for 3 years. Here was someone who understood that grief wasn't a problem to solve. It was a companion you learned to live with. Thank you, I said, for being honest. Always. His dark eyes held mine. I won't lie to you, Vivian. Not about who I am or what I do. You deserve better than comfortable fictions. Over the following days, we fell into a routine. Mornings on the terrace, talking about everything except the obvious attraction building between us. Afternoon walks along the private beach, where Nikolai would point out landmarks, and I'd share stories from Murphy's, the good ones that made him laugh. Evenings in his study, where I'd read while he worked, comfortable in shared silence. I learned that he'd inherited the organization at 19, when his parents were killed in a coordinated hit. That he hated violence, but wielded it with precision because the alternative was weakness, and weakness meant death. That he funded 3 scholarship programs and 2 women's shelters under shell corporations, because he believed in giving people chances his brother never got. He learned that I'd been a graduate student in social work before the accident, that I'd abandoned everything afterward because helping people felt like a cruel joke when I couldn't save the one person who mattered, that I'd spent 3 years in self-imposed exile, convinced I didn't deserve peace. You punish yourself by refusing to live, he said one evening, setting down his whiskey. Dylan wouldn't want that. You don't know what Dylan would want. The words came out sharper than intended. You're right. But I know what my brother would want. And it wouldn't be watching me bury myself in guilt. He stood, crossing to where I sat, curled on the couch. At some point, surviving has to become living. Otherwise, what's the point? I wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. He was right, and we both knew it. On the 10th day, everything changed. Ryan Callahan appeared during breakfast, his scarred face grim. He pulled Nikolai aside, speaking in urgent whispers. I caught fragments. Escalation. Retaliation. 3 warehouses. Nikolai returned to the table, but the warmth had drained from his expression, replaced by something cold and distant. I need to handle something. Stay in the house. For the next 2 days, he barely spoke to me. He was there physically, but absent in every way that mattered, reverting to the controlled stranger who'd first sat in my bar. The sudden withdrawal cut deeper than it should have. I'd let myself grow comfortable, forget that this was temporary. On the 12th night, I found him in the study at 2 a.m., staring at papers scattered across his desk. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. You're avoiding me. I'm protecting you. He didn't look up. By shutting me out? By remembering what you are. Now he met my gaze, and the ice in his eyes made me flinch. You're a civilian caught in a war. Getting attached would be a mistake for both of us. The dismissal was meant to sting, and it worked. But underneath the hurt, I felt something else. Anger. Don't do that. Don't pretend the last 2 weeks didn't happen. Nothing happened. You needed protection. I provided it. His tone was flat, final. In 2 days, you'll return to your life, and this will be over. I should have accepted it. Should have been grateful for the clean exit. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Where are you going? For a walk. Unless that's against your rules, too. I made it halfway across the lawn before the sky opened up. October storm rolling in with sudden fury. Cold rain soaked through my clothes in seconds. But I kept walking, needing distance from feelings I couldn't name. Footsteps behind me. Vivian, come back inside. Why? So you can remind me how temporary this is? I spun to face him, rain streaming down my face. I know what I am, Nikolai. I'm the broken bartender you saved. The charity case. The distraction. That's not... I'm just a broken woman. The words ripped out of me. 3 years of self-loathing pouring into the storm. I couldn't save my brother. I can't fix myself. I'm scarred and damaged and not worth whatever complicated game you're playing. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, hands framing my face, his own soaked through and furious. Then I'll be the one to fix you. The kiss stole my breath, fierce and desperate. His mouth claimed mine like he was drowning and I was air. I kissed back just as hard, 3 years of numbness shattering under the weight of feeling too much all at once. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead pressed against mine. You already started fixing me, he whispered, the moment you looked at me without fear, standing in the rain, holding on to each other like lifelines. I finally understood. We were both broken, but maybe together we could find a way to heal. Everything shifted after the kiss, not in grand, dramatic ways, but in small moments that accumulated like interest. The way Nikolai's hand would find mine during our morning coffee. How I started leaving books in his study, marking passages I thought he'd appreciate. The conversations that stretched past midnight, covering everything from his mother's recipe for braised lamb to my abandoned thesis on trauma-informed care. 2 weeks became 3, then 4, and neither of us mentioned my leaving. You're aware that Sam thinks I've kidnapped you, Nikolai said one afternoon, reading from his phone. She sent me 6 texts today alone, each one more creative with legal threats. I laughed, curled against his side on the terrace sofa. The October chill had given way to early November cold, but heat lamps kept the space comfortable. She's protective, always has been. She should visit. See that you're here by choice. The word choice resonated. I'd spent 3 years making no choices, just letting life happen to me. Staying with Nikolai was the first deliberate decision I'd made since the accident, and it terrified me how right it felt. Sam arrived the next day in full lawyer mode, designer coat buttoned against the wind, expression set for battle. Nikolai greeted her with surprising charm, offering coffee and leading us to the sitting room before excusing himself to give us privacy. Are you insane? Sam hissed the moment he left. Vivian, this man is dangerous. He's involved in things that could get you killed. I know what he is. I met her gaze steadily. I also know he's never lied to me, never made me feel small, and treats me like an equal instead of a broken thing that needs fixing. You were shot because of him. I was shot because of Lucia Voss. Nikolai saved my life. I touched the healing scar on my shoulder, visible above my sweater neckline. I'm not asking for your approval, Sam. Just your trust that I know what I'm doing. She studied me for a long moment, lawyer's eyes cataloging every detail. Finally, she sighed. You look different. Alive in a way you haven't been since Dylan. I feel different. If he hurts you, I'll destroy him legally and financially. But her tone had softened. That said, he looks at you like you hung the moon. It's nauseating, and oddly sweet. We talked for another hour, real conversation, instead of the careful exchanges we'd shared for years. When Nikolai returned, Sam grilled him with professional precision about his intentions, his business, his capacity to keep me safe. He answered everything with brutal honesty that seemed to satisfy her more than reassurances would have. Take care of my sister, Sam said at the door, pointing one manicured finger at his chest, or you'll discover exactly how vicious a corporate lawyer can be. Understood. Nikolai shook her hand, respect clear in his expression. Thank you for trusting me with her. After Sam left, I found myself watching Nikolai with new appreciation. He'd submitted to my sister's interrogation without complaint, understanding what her approval meant to me. You didn't have to do that, I said. Yes, I did. She matters to you. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple. Therefore, she matters to me. The domesticity of the next week lulled me into dangerous comfort. I learned that Nikolai was methodical in everything, from his morning routine to how he organized his weapons safe, that he preferred bourbon to whiskey despite his Irish heritage, that he had nightmares sometimes, waking in the dark with violence in his eyes, until he recognized me. I showed him the person I'd been before grief consumed me, the social worker who believed in second chances, the sister who'd taught Dylan to ride a bike, the woman who used to laugh freely instead of rationing joy like it might run out. You're good at this, Nikolai observed one evening. watching me sketch conversation strategies for his legitimate businesses, seeing angles other people miss, finding common ground. It's what I was trained for. Conflict resolution, finding paths forward when people are stuck. I set down my pen, though I never imagined applying it to organized crime. Most of what I do is legal now. The other parts are maintained out of necessity, not preference. He leaned back, studying the ceiling. If I could walk away entirely, I would. But that's not how this works. Why not? I'd been wondering for weeks. You have legitimate income, connections, resources. What's stopping you? Legacy. Obligation. His jaw tightened. My father built this organization to protect our community when no one else would. Immigrant families who couldn't go to the police, businesses being extorted by worse people than us. Walking away would create a vacuum that Voss or someone like her would fill. I understood the trap he described. Sometimes the right choice wasn't clear-cut, just varying shades of gray. Then we work within it, I said. Find ways to minimize harm while maintaining stability. We. The pronoun slipped out naturally, and Nikolai caught it, something warm kindling in his dark eyes. We? He repeated like testing the word. I like the sound of that. Ryan appeared during breakfast the following morning, his scarred face grimmer than usual. He barely glanced at me before focusing on Nikolai. We need to talk. Now. They disappeared into the study. Through the closed door, I heard raised voices, sharp and urgent. When Nikolai emerged 20 minutes later, the warmth had drained from his expression, replaced by the cold mask I remembered from the warehouse. What's wrong? Business. Nothing for you to worry about. He was already reaching for his jacket, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. Nikolai, I'll be back tonight. He dropped a quick kiss on my forehead, but it felt perfunctory. Dismissive. Stay inside. He left before I could respond, Ryan trailing behind him. The house felt immediately empty, all the life sucked out with Nikolai's departure. Hours passed. Then a day. Nikolai returned late that night, but didn't come to find me. I heard him in his room, pacing like a caged animal. The next morning, he was gone again before I woke. The pattern continued for 3 days. Brief appearances, clipped responses, walls rebuilt higher than ever. The man who'd kissed me in the rain had vanished, replaced by the crime boss who saw me as a liability. On the 4th night, I'd had sufficient time to work myself into fury. I found him in the study at midnight, exactly where I'd expected, surrounded by papers and empty whiskey glasses. This stops now. He didn't look up. Go to bed, Vivian. No. I crossed to his desk, planting my hands on the surface. You don't get to kiss me like I matter and then freeze me out. Either I'm part of this or I'm not. You're not. His voice could have cut glass. You're a civilian who got dragged into a war. I was foolish to forget that. Stop lying. To me and yourself. Now he met my gaze, and the ice in his eyes made me step back. Lucia Voss burned 3 of my warehouses, killed 5 of my men. She's escalating because she thinks you're a weakness she can exploit, and she's right. So what? You push me away to protect me? I push you away to protect both of us. He stood, and I saw the exhaustion carved into his features. Caring about you makes me vulnerable. I can't afford vulnerability, not now. That's the excuse you're going with? Anger overrode self-preservation. You're scared. Not of Voss, of this. I gestured between us, of feeling something real for once instead of hiding behind your organization and your guilt. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about because I've been doing the same thing for 3 years. My voice cracked. Hiding in a bar, refusing to feel anything, convinced I didn't deserve happiness. You showed me how cowardly that was, and now you're doing it yourself. This isn't the same. It's exactly the same. You're choosing fear over possibility. His control snapped. 3 people died yesterday because I was distracted thinking about you instead of focusing on strategy. Their blood is on my hands because I let myself care about a woman I barely know. The words hung between us, brutal in their honesty. I should have been hurt, should have walked away. Instead, I saw the truth underneath. He blamed himself, just like I blamed myself for Dylan. We were mirrors, reflecting each other's deepest wounds. Those deaths aren't your fault any more than Dylan's death was mine, I said quietly. We can spend our lives believing we don't deserve peace, or we can choose differently. It's not that simple. Nothing worth having is simple. Before he could build another wall, I grabbed my jacket and headed for the French doors leading to the garden. I needed air, needed space from the suffocating weight of his guilt mixing with mine. Where are you going? For a walk. I didn't look back, unless you're planning to actually stop me this time instead of just issuing orders. The garden was dark and cold, November wind biting through my jacket. I made it to the edge of the property before the first drops fell, the storm rolling in fast and vicious like it had been waiting for the right moment. Within seconds, I was soaked through, rain plastering my hair to my face. I should have gone back inside, but the storm felt appropriate, external chaos matching what churned inside my chest. Footsteps splashed through puddles behind me. Vivian, this is insane. Come inside. Why? I spun to face him, rain streaming down both our faces. So you can pretend this isn't happening? So you can convince yourself you're protecting me by shutting me out? I'm trying to keep you alive. I don't want safe if it means half living. The words tore from somewhere deep. I've been doing that for 3 years and I'm done. I'd rather risk everything for something real than spend another day pretending I'm fine when I'm dying inside. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating his face in sharp relief. You don't understand what you're asking. Being with me means accepting danger, violence, choices no good person should have to make. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for honest. I stepped closer, close enough to see water drops clinging to his eyelashes. I'm just a broken woman who can't save herself. Can't fix the past. Can't promise I won't shatter again. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're both allowed to be broken. His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs brushing water from my cheeks. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Then I'll be the one to fix you. We fix each other, I corrected. Together. The kiss was different this time. Not desperate or claiming, but deliberate. A choice we were both making with full knowledge of the consequences. His mouth moved against mine with reverence, like I was something precious instead of damaged. When we pulled apart, foreheads pressed together, rain continued falling around us. I'm terrified, he admitted, of failing you the way I failed everyone else. I'm terrified too, but I'm more afraid of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. We stood in the storm, holding each other while the world dissolved into water and wind. Two broken people choosing to risk shattering again, because the alternative, safety through isolation, had nearly destroyed us both. Later, dried off and tangled together in Nikolai's bed, he traced the scar on my shoulder with gentle fingers. No more running, he said. Not from this, not from each other. No more running, I agreed. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, wrapped in warmth and the fragile hope of new beginning, I finally felt like I might survive after all. The decision to stay wasn't made in one grand moment, but in 100 small ones. Morning coffee watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. Evenings where I'd review contracts for Nikolai's legitimate businesses, pointing out liability issues my social work training made visible. Nights tangled together, sharing space and breath like we were trying to make up for years of isolation. I wasn't naive about what I'd chosen. Nikolai walked me through his operations with uncomfortable honesty. The protection rackets he maintained, the gray market goods he moved, the violence he authorized when necessary. I established boundaries, lines I wouldn't cross, and he respected them without argument. I don't need you involved in the illegal aspects, he said one afternoon in his study, but I want you to understand what you're signing up for. No illusions. I appreciate that. I set down the financial report I'd been examining. Though I reserve the right to call you out when you're being unnecessarily brutal. Deal. His mouth quirked. You already do that anyway. Sometimes I thought about Murphy's bar, that life I'd built from grief and avoidance. It felt distant now, like remembering someone else's story. I'd been surviving there, treading water in an ocean of guilt. Here with Nikolai, I was learning to swim again. Not that everything was perfect. We fought about his refusal to delegate, about my tendency to internalize stress until I snapped. But we fought fair, without cruelty, and always came back to each other afterward. Sam visited regularly, her initial disapproval softening into cautious acceptance. She and Nikolai developed an unlikely rapport, bonding over shared pragmatism and dark humor. Watching them debate legal precedents over dinner, I felt pieces of my fractured life starting to knit together. "You're happy," Sam observed one evening after Nikolai excused himself to take a call. "Actually happy, not just pretending. I am." The admission felt strange. "Is that allowed? Viv, you spent 3 years punishing yourself for surviving. If being with a morally complicated crime boss is what it takes for you to live again, I'll take it." She squeezed my hand. "Dylan would want you happy. You know that, right?" I did know. Intellectually, I'd always known. But believing it, letting myself feel it, that was different. The war with Lucia Voss simmered in the background. Occasional flare-ups that Nikolai handled with calculated efficiency. He kept me informed but insulated, walking the line between honesty and protection. I didn't love it, but I understood the logic. Everything changed when Ryan burst into breakfast one Tuesday morning, his usually controlled expression urgent. "We have a problem. Lucia's planning something for the charity gala." Nikolai went still, that predatory focus I'd learned to recognize settling over him. "What kind of something?" "Our source says she's bringing 50 armed men. She wants to hit you publicly, make a statement." The charity gala. Nikolai had mentioned it weeks ago, an annual event he hosted to honor his brother's memory, raising funds for architecture scholarships. 500 guests, including politicians, business leaders, and legitimate society figures who pretended not to know where Nikolai's money came from. "Cancel it," I said immediately. "I can't." Nikolai's jaw tightened. "Canceling shows weakness. Voss wins without firing a shot. Better your pride wounded than you dead. It's not about pride." He turned to me, frustration and affection warring in his dark eyes. "If I back down now, every small-time operator will see it as invitation. The fragile peace we've maintained collapses, and dozens of innocent people get caught in the violence." I hated that he was right. "So what's the alternative?" "We use it against her." Ryan leaned over the table, sketching on a notepad. "Let her think she's walking into a soft target. Meanwhile, we position our people, control the environment. When she makes her move, we contain it." "You're talking about a firefight at a charity event." I couldn't keep the horror from my voice. "I'm talking about preventing one." Nikolai covered my hand with his. "We evacuate civilians at the first sign of trouble. No one gets hurt except the people who came looking for violence." It was a terrible plan. It was also the only plan that didn't result in worse outcomes. I spent the next hour arguing for alternatives until Nikolai pulled me aside, away from Ryan's tactical analysis. "I need to know you're okay with this." Not resigned, actually okay. His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Because if you're not, I find another way. There is no other way." I covered his hands with mine. "But I'm going with you." "Absolutely not. You don't get to decide that." I kept my voice level despite the fear clawing up my throat. "If this is my life now, I don't get to hide when it gets dangerous. I trust you to keep me safe. Trust me to hold my own." Something passed between us. Understanding that went deeper than words. He pulled me against his chest, and I felt his heart hammering beneath expensive cotton. "If anything happens to you," he said into my hair, "I'll burn the world down. Then don't let anything happen." The next week was controlled chaos. Security briefings, contingency plans, Ryan drilling his people on civilian protection protocols. Nikolai worked 18-hour days, and I watched the exhaustion accumulate in the set of his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes. "Come to bed," I said on the third night, finding him still in his study at 2 a.m. "Soon. I need to finalize the evacuation routes." I crossed to him, turning his chair so he faced me. "You need sleep more than you need another plan revision. Vivian, I'm serious. You're running on fumes and coffee. That's when mistakes happen." I straddled his lap, framing his face the way he did mine. "Trust your people to handle the details. Trust yourself to have prepared well." His hand settled on my waist, and I felt some of the tension drain from him. "When did you become the voice of reason?" "I learned from watching you self-destruct under pressure. Figured I should intervene before you collapse." He huffed a laugh, leaning his forehead against mine. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Saved my life. Multiple times." I kissed him, slow and deep. Now come to bed before I drag you there. The night of the gala arrived too quickly. Standing in front of the mirror in an emerald gown Nikolai had chosen, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked confident, sophisticated, nothing like the broken bartender who'd served him whiskey 6 weeks ago. Nikolai appeared in the doorway, devastating in a black tuxedo, his hair styled back to show the sharp angles of his face. The crow tattoo on his neck was visible above his collar. Deliberate statement that he wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't. "You're stunning!" He crossed to me, fastening a diamond necklace around my throat. "But it's not the dress. What is it then?" "You." His hands rested on my shoulders, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "You're not hiding anymore. It shows." He was right. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't trying to disappear. I was present, fully occupying space in the world instead of apologizing for existing. The hotel ballroom was spectacular. All crystal chandeliers and champagne towers, 500 people in evening wear pretending this was just another sophisticated fundraiser. Nikolai moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing me as his partner to people whose names I recognized from news coverage. I played the part, making small talk about architecture programs and urban development, while my awareness tracked exits and Ryan's security team positioned throughout the room. Every face could be a threat. Every waiter could be armed. 2 hours in, Lucia Voss made her entrance. She wore crimson, bold, and unapologetic. Her red hair swept up to reveal a face that could have launched ships or wars. 50 men didn't accompany her. She was alone except for 2 bodyguards, moving through the crowd like she owned it. "This is wrong," I murmured to Nikolai. "Where's her army?" "I don't know." His hand tightened on my waist. "Ryan, status check." Ryan's voice crackled through the nearly invisible earpiece. "Perimeter's clear. No unusual activity." Lucia reached us, champagne flute in hand, smile sharp as broken glass. "Nikolai, still throwing parties for dead brothers, I see." "Lucia, still trying to compensate for inadequacy with aggression?" Her laugh was genuine. "I've missed our conversations. Direct violence is so tedious." Her gaze shifted to me, calculating. "You must be the bartender who started all this trouble." "Vivian Cole." I extended my hand, refusing to be intimidated. "Nice to finally meet you without being tied up." She took my hand, respect flickering in her eyes. "You've got spine." "I like that." Then to Nikolai. "We need to talk, privately." "Not a chance." "Your choice. But you'll want to hear this." She set down her champagne. "My organization is being dismantled from the inside. Someone's been systematically eliminating my infrastructure for weeks. I thought it was you, until I realized you're bleeding assets too." Ice flooded my veins. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we've both been played." Lucia pulled out her phone, showing surveillance photos. "My second in command has been meeting with representatives from the Sinaloa cartel. They're making a move on the East Coast, and they're using our war as cover." The explosion happened before Nikolai could respond. The west wall erupted inward, fire and smoke and screaming chaos. Instinct took over. Nikolai shoved me toward Ryan while pulling his weapon. Security personnel materialized from everywhere, forming protective barriers around civilians. "Get them out!" Nikolai's command cut through the panic. "North exits now!" The crowd surged toward doors, evening gowns and tuxedos trampling each other in terror. I tried to stay close to Ryan, but the crush of bodies separated us. Someone's elbow caught my temple. Vision swimming. I stumbled sideways, fetching up against the wall. Through the smoke, I saw Lucia Voss on the ground, blood spreading across her crimson dress, abandoned by her bodyguards who'd vanished the moment violence erupted. No one else was moving toward her. Everyone ran away from danger, from the woman who'd been their enemy hours ago. But I'd spent 3 years living with the weight of not saving someone when it mattered. I wasn't doing it again. I ran toward Lucia instead of away, dropping to my knees beside her. Blood soaked through her dress from a wound in her side, her face pale with shock. "You're insane," she gasped. "Leave me." "Not happening." I pressed my hands against the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. "Can you walk?" "Don't know." She tried to push herself up, grimacing. "My people left me. Then you're stuck with me." I got my shoulder under her arm, hauling her upright. She was heavier than she looked, dead weight against my side as we stumbled toward the emergency stairs. The stairwell was chaos, people shoving and screaming. I kept Lucia upright through sheer stubbornness, taking stairs one at a time while blood dripped between my fingers. Behind us, more explosions. Gunfire. The sounds of war come to a hotel ballroom. We made it outside as the partial detonation tore through the west wing. The blast wave knocked us forward onto concrete, my ears ringing from the concussion. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything except high-pitched whining. Then hands were pulling me up. Nikolai's face appearing through the smoke, wild with fear and fury. "Are you hurt?" He was shouting, but it sounded distant through the ringing. "I'm okay. Lucia needs a doctor." He looked at the woman I'd dragged to safety like she was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. "You saved her." She was bleeding out. What was I supposed to do? Something passed across his face, too complex to name. Then Ryan was there with medics, taking Lucia and checking me over despite my protests. The scene around us was controlled pandemonium. Emergency vehicles, security teams, civilians being escorted to safety. No bodies that I could see, which meant the evacuation had worked. "Her tenente," Lucia said through gritted teeth as the medic worked on her wound. "Sebastian, he orchestrated this. Been planning it for months." Nikolai crouched beside her. "Talk. Sinaloa cartel wanted East Coast territory. Sebastian approached them, offered to remove both of us in exchange for running their operations here." She winced as the medic applied pressure. "He's been sabotaging my organization, making it look like your work, escalating tensions so we'd destroy each other. How long have you known?" 2 days. Found financial records showing payouts from Mexican accounts." Lucia's laugh turned into a cough. "I came tonight to propose a truce. Looks like Sebastian decided to accelerate his timeline." Ryan appeared, tablet in hand. "We've got confirmation. Sebastian and his people are gone. They hit 3 of our warehouses simultaneously with the explosion here. Casualties?" Nikolai's voice was flat, dangerous. 4 of ours, unknown on theirs." Ryan glanced at Lucia. "Her second-in-command is definitely working with the cartel. We have surveillance of him meeting with known Sinaloa operatives." Nikolai stood, something lethal settling over his features. "How many people does Sebastian have?" "Maybe 30 of Lucia's former soldiers, plus however many the cartel sent." Ryan pulled up a map. "They'll fortify, wait for us to tear each other apart. Then we don't give them what they expect." Nikolai looked at Lucia. "You want him dead as much as I do." "More." Lucia struggled to sitting despite the medic's protests. "He was family. I trusted him with everything. Family's a complicated thing to betray." Nikolai extended his hand. "Temporary alliance. We eliminate the cartel presence, deal with Sebastian, then go back to our territories." Lucia studied his hand like it might be a trap. Then she looked at me, covered in her blood, and something in her expression softened. "Your woman saved my life when she had every reason to let me die. I don't forget debts." She clasped Nikolai's hand. "Alliance. But I want Sebastian alive long enough to look him in the eyes." The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. Lucia's people and Nikolai's working together, sharing intelligence, coordinating strategy. 2 organizations that had been at war learning to function as one unit. And somehow I became the bridge between them. It started accidentally. Lucia's third-in-command didn't trust Nikolai's information about cartel movements. I cross-referenced their data with public records, finding patterns that proved Nikolai right. When disputes arose about resource allocation, I mediated, finding compromises that satisfied both sides. "You're good at this," Nikolai observed one night, watching me diagram supply routes that wouldn't overlap territories, seeing what people need instead of what they're demanding. It's basic conflict resolution. I marked another intersection. People fight about surface issues when the real problem is deeper. Fear of losing control, being disrespected, becoming vulnerable. Is that what you see when you look at us? Fear disguised as violence? Sometimes. I set down my marker. But I also see people trying to protect what matters to them. That's not wrong. Just complicated. He pulled me away from the whiteboard, into his arms. "How did I survive this long without you?" "Carefully and badly, from what I understand." His laugh vibrated through my chest. For a moment, We could pretend this was normal. Just two people in love instead of two people coordinating a counteroffensive against Mexican cartels. Ryan's intelligence revealed the cartel's weakness. Their entire East Coast operation depended on a specific money laundering network, restaurants and car washes and real estate holdings all funneling cash back to Mexico. Without that financial infrastructure, they couldn't sustain operations. We could hit them directly, Lucia suggested during a strategy meeting. Burn it all down. Too visible, I said, studying the network diagram. But what if we didn't have to burn anything? Everyone turned to look at me. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but pushed forward. Sam has FBI contacts, prosecutors who'd love to take down a major cartel operation. What if we gave them everything they need anonymously? You want to involve federal agents? One of Lucia's men looked scandalized. I want to remove the cartel without starting a war that gets civilians killed. I met Nikolai's gaze. They came here thinking they could exploit chaos. Let's show them what coordination looks like. Nikolai was quiet for a long moment. I knew what I was asking, that he work with the same system that had been trying to dismantle his organization for years. It went against everything his world stood for. It's brilliant, Lucia said suddenly. The Federals do our dirty work, we keep our hands clean, and the cartel loses their foothold without a single shot fired. They've already fired plenty of shots, Ryan pointed out. 4 of our people are dead, which is why Sebastian dies, Nikolai said flatly. But Vivian's right about the cartel. We use the system against them. Getting the information to the FBI without revealing sources took coordination. Sam worked her contacts, presenting the intelligence as an anonymous tip that her firm had received. The federal response was swift and massive. Simultaneous raids across 5 states, seizing assets and arresting dozens of cartel operatives. Within a week, the Sinaloa presence on the East Coast crumbled. Without financial support, their people retreated to Mexico, leaving Sebastian exposed and alone. He's fortified in one of my warehouses, Lucia announced, looking at surveillance feeds. 20 men, maybe fewer. Dug in like he can wait us out. He can't. Nikolai traced entry points on the blueprint. We cut power, water, supplies. He surrenders or starves. I want him alive. Lucia's voice carried edges. He gets to answer for what he did. The operation took 2 days of siege before Sebastian's people started surrendering. They were tired, hungry, and smart enough to recognize when they'd lost. Sebastian himself held out until the end, finally emerging with hands raised. Lucia walked up to him slowly, her side still bandaged from the gala. She studied him like he was a stranger, this man who'd been her right hand for 7 years. Why? Her voice was soft, which somehow made it more terrible. You were weak. Sebastian spat. Making deals, showing mercy. This business requires strength. Strength. Lucia repeated the word like it tasted bad. You confused brutality with strength. That's why you failed. She turned away. Done with him. Nikolai's people took Sebastian into custody, and I knew better than to ask what would happen next. Some questions didn't need answers. 2 months after the gala explosion, Lucia stood in Nikolai's study, looking almost uncomfortable. My territory is stable again. Sebastian's betrayal left holes, but I filled them. She met his gaze. Our alliance served its purpose. Agreed. Nikolai stood, extending his hand. Back to business as usual, with modifications. Lucia shook his hand. Vivian established communication protocols between our organizations. Seems foolish to abandon them just because we're not actively allied. Diplomatic channels, I clarified. Ways to resolve disputes without escalation. I'm not going soft, Lucia warned. But I'm not stupid either. This worked because we communicated. She looked at me. You have a talent for seeing common ground. If you ever tire of this one, I pay better. I'll keep that in mind, I said, smiling despite myself. After Lucia left, Nikolai pulled me against him. You just changed how organized crime works on the East Coast. I just applied basic mediation strategies. You made peace where there's only been war. He kissed my temple. That's more than basic anything. Outside the window, early winter sun sparkled on the Atlantic. Somewhere out there, the world continued turning, full of violence and chaos we couldn't control. But in this moment, wrapped in Nikolai's arms with hard-won peace holding fragile but real. I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. Peace lasted exactly 3 days before the cartel retaliated. Ryan burst into the Cape Cod house at dawn, his face grim. They're coming. 50 vehicles heading this way, maybe more. The Federals crippled their finances. But they still have soldiers, and they want blood. Nikolai was already moving, pulling weapons from the safe with practiced efficiency. Evacuation protocol. Get the staff out through the north route. I'm not leaving. I was already lacing up boots, grabbing the tactical vest Ryan had insisted I learn to wear. Don't waste time arguing. His jaw tightened, but he knew better than to fight me on this. Stay with Ryan. Follow his orders exactly. Agreed. The next hour was controlled chaos. Lucia's people arrived first, honoring the alliance with reinforcements we desperately needed. They took positions along the perimeter while Nikolai's security team fortified the house. I helped Ryan coordinate communications, tracking enemy movement on surveillance feeds. They're not trying subtlety, Ryan observed, watching the convoy approach. This is about sending a message. Then we send one back, Nikolai said quietly. No one attacks my home and walks away. The first wave hit at noon. Gunfire erupted from every direction, shattering windows and tearing through walls. I stayed low behind reinforced barriers, watching Ryan direct defensive fire with surgical precision. This wasn't like the warehouse or the gala. This was organized warfare. East wall breach, someone shouted through comms. They're inside. Ryan grabbed my arm. With me. Now. We moved through the house in controlled retreat, Ryan clearing corners while I stayed on his 6 like he'd drilled into me. Behind us, I heard Nikolai's voice directing his people, calm and lethal even surrounded by violence. A cartel soldier appeared at the end of the hall, rifle raised. Ryan fired first, efficient double tap that dropped the man instantly. We kept moving, reaching the reinforced study where the real stand would happen. How many? Nikolai appeared beside us, blood on his sleeve from someone else's wound. At least 30 inside, more outside. Ryan checked his magazine. We can hold this position for maybe an hour. Lucia's people? I asked. Holding the perimeter. Nikolai met my eyes, and I saw something raw beneath his control. Fear, not for himself, but for me. You should have left when you had the chance. Probably. I checked my own weapon, the one he'd taught me to use weeks ago just in case. But I make terrible decisions. You knew that. His laugh was brief and genuine. Then the door exploded inward, and there was no more time for anything except survival. What followed was brutal and close. Fighting room to room, every corner potentially hiding death. I fired my weapon twice, both times hitting targets that would have killed Ryan. The recoil jarred my shoulders, but muscle memory Nikolai had drilled into me took over. We fell back to the main room, forming a defensive circle. Bodies littered the floor, most theirs but some ours. The cost of violence always paid in blood. Rooftop sniper, Ryan barked. Northwest position. Nikolai was already moving to the window, weapon raised. I saw the laser sight track across the room, settling on his chest. Time crystallized, everything happening too fast and too slow simultaneously. Nikolai! I shoved him sideways as the shot rang out. Pain exploded through my abdomen, white hot and stealing my breath. I looked down, confused by the spreading crimson across my shirt. Oh, that's bad. My legs gave out. Strong arms caught me before I hit the floor, Nikolai's face above me, shouting something I couldn't hear through the ringing in my ears. More gunfire, Ryan's voice screaming orders. Then Nikolai was running with me in his arms. The study. Dr. Hayes materializing from somewhere, hands already bloody from treating other wounded. Nikolai laying me on the desk, his face carved from terror and rage. Don't you dare, he said, pressing down on my abdomen. The pressure made me scream. Don't you dare leave me. Not planning on it, I gasped. Hurts too much to die. Dr. Hayes was cutting away my shirt, barking orders at his assistant. Bullet went through. That's good, but she's losing too much blood. I need to operate now. Do whatever it takes, Nikolai ordered. I don't care what it costs. It'll cost her pain. This isn't a sterile environment. Dr. Hayes met my eyes. You need to stay conscious as long as possible. Can you do that? I nodded, or thought I did. Everything was getting fuzzy around the edges. Nikolai's hand found mine, grip almost painful in its intensity. Stay with me, he said. Please, Vivian. Stay. Bossy. I mumbled. Then Dr. Hayes did something that made the world dissolve into agony, and I was grateful when darkness swallowed me whole. I woke in pieces over the next 3 days. Brief moments of consciousness, Nikolai's voice reading to me, his hand never leaving mine. Pain that came in waves, medication that dragged me back under. Dr. Hayes's face appearing to check vitals, concern gradually shifting to cautious optimism. On the 3rd day, I surfaced fully. Late afternoon sun streamed through windows, illuminating Nikolai slumped in the chair beside the bed. He looked terrible. Days of beard growth, dark circles under his eyes, clothes rumpled like he'd been wearing them since the attack. You look worse than I feel. I croaked. His head snapped up, dark eyes widening. Within seconds, he was beside me, hands framing my face with infinite gentleness. You're awake. Really awake. Really thirsty. He laughed, the sound breaking on something that might have been a sob, and helped me drink water. Every movement hurt. My abdomen wrapped in enough bandaging to make me look like a mummy. What happened? I asked, after I passed out. We held them off. Lucia's reinforcements arrived, and we drove them back. His thumb traced my cheekbone. The cartel lost 70 people. They retreated to Mexico and haven't been heard from since. Our people? 12 dead, 24 wounded. His jaw tightened. You saved my life. That sniper would have killed me. Guess we're even now. I tried to shift position and immediately regretted it. How bad is it? Dr. Hayes says you'll make full recovery. The bullet missed anything vital, but you lost a lot of blood. His hands were shaking slightly. I thought I'd lost you. 3 days, watching you fight through surgery, through infection. I've never been that terrified. I'm tougher than I look. I know. He pressed his forehead to mine, breathing me in like he needed to confirm I was real. I love you, Vivian. Completely. Terrifyingly. Can't imagine existing without you, love you. The words should have scared me. 3 months ago, they would have. But staring at this man who'd shown me how to live again, who'd matched my brokenness with his own, and somehow created something whole, I felt nothing but certainty. I love you too. The admission was easy, though your timing could use work. His laugh vibrated through both of us. I'll work on that. 2 months passed. The FBI dismantled what remained of the cartel's East Coast operations, following the trail of evidence to prosecutions that would take years. Lucia returned to her territory, the diplomatic channels we'd established holding firm. Sebastian faced trial for his betrayals, and I didn't ask about the verdict. My recovery was slow but steady. The scar on my abdomen joined the one on my shoulder and cheek, mapping a body that had survived more than it should have. Instead of hiding them, I wore them openly. Evidence that I'd lived, fought, refused to disappear. Nikolai transformed parts of his organization, scaling back illegal operations where possible, investing in legitimate businesses. It wasn't a complete reformation. There were realities of his world we both accepted. But it was progress, evolution toward something less destructive. I took on a formal role in his legitimate holdings, consulting on human resources and conflict resolution. The skills I'd learned in graduate school finally had application, helping people instead of serving them drinks while drowning in guilt. Sam visited weekly, her relationship with Nikolai settling into genuine friendship. She brought news from the outside world, reminding me I hadn't completely abandoned normal life, even as I'd chosen this complicated one. On a cold Saturday in February, Nikolai drove us north from Cape Cod, refusing to tell me where we were going. I recognized the route eventually. The cemetery where Dylan was buried, where I hadn't been able to visit for 3 years. You don't have to do this, Nikolai said gently. We can turn around. No. I squeezed his hand. I need to do this. Dylan's gravestone was simple. Name. Dates. Beloved son and brother. I knelt in the cold grass, tracing the letters with shaking fingers. I'm sorry I stayed away so long, I said to the stone, to the memory. to the brother I'd failed. I thought I didn't deserve to move forward, that staying broken was somehow honoring you. Nikolai crouched beside me, silent support. But I met someone who showed me that surviving and living are different things. That the best way to honor you is to actually be happy. Tears tracked down my face, cold in the winter air. So I'm going to try, Dylan. I'm going to be happy. I think you'd like Nikolai. He's dangerous and protective and terrible at expressing emotions. But he's good where it counts. High praise, Nikolai murmured. I turned to him, this man who'd saved me in every way that mattered. I want you to meet Dylan properly. Not just as a grave, but as part of my story. I'd like that. We stayed until the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. When we stood to leave, I felt lighter than I had in years. The grief remained, it always would, but it no longer defined me. Walking back to the car, Nikolai's arm around my waist supporting me as my abdomen still protested extended standing, I looked at the ocean visible beyond the cemetery gates. The same ocean I saw from our house in Cape Cod, connecting past and present and future. What are you thinking? Nikolai asked. That I spent 3 years convinced I was too broken to be fixed. That loving me would be more burden than blessing. I leaned into him, feeling his strength and warmth. You proved me wrong about everything. We proved each other wrong. He pressed a kiss to my temple. 2 broken people who found a way to fit together. Is that what we are? Fitted together? I think we're more than that. His dark eyes held mine, serious and certain. We're not broken anymore, Vivian. We're healed. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe with scars and rough edges. But whole. He was right. Somewhere between that first night in Murphy's bar and this moment in a cemetery parking lot, I'd stopped being the woman who couldn't forgive herself for surviving. I'd become someone who chose to live fully, love deeply, and fight for happiness instead of accepting suffering as penance. Take me home, I said. Nikolai smiled, the expression transforming his usually severe face into something warm and unguarded. Always. We drove south as twilight deepened, leaving the cemetery and its ghosts behind. Not forgotten, never that. But finally, truly at peace. The road ahead held complications and challenges. The nature of our lives guaranteed it. But we'd face them together. 2 people who'd found salvation not in being fixed, but in choosing each other despite and because of every scar.